Welcome and Womajeka to the Imposter Syndrome Club. My name is Jessamy G. I'm joined by my beautiful co-host, Miss Alice Eady. Welcome, Alice.
That's me, hi.
That's you. So for those of you who have listened to our previous interview episode with Reese Paddock, if you haven't, go and listen to it. It's one of my favourite interview episodes to date. But we talked to him at length about how we'd been intending on doing an acknowledgement of country as part of our intro to the podcast and how, why we hadn't done it yet and wanting to make it feel authentic and how to go about that. And one of the things we spoke about was around starting with language, which I think as two kind of language nerds as a really relevant and it feels like a meaningful and authentic place to start. So Womajeka in Woiwurrung language, which is the language of the Wurundjeri people. We're recording on Wurundjeri land here in Melbourne. Is often used in place of welcome, but at its core, when you break down the parts of the word, it actually means to come with purpose. And I think regardless of the ridiculous tangents that we often go on this podcast, there is significant purpose here and thinking about the acknowledgement to country at its core being around connecting people with place. We are in place here, you and I, with our feet on the ground on Wurundjeri land, but I think the place that we are hoping to create with this, where we come with purpose, is less of a physical space, and it's a place where we hope people can feel like they belong and feel less afraid and
feel welcomed
and feel welcome
in all of our imperfections as well. I think what's so important to us, and we've folded into everything we do, is that you don't need to be ready, you don't need to be good, you don't need to be anything. You're welcome here, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, there we go. There's our first go at doing our acknowledgement of country in a way that feels authentic and non-performative to us. And we're going to do it every week, and we'll get better at it with time. Yeah.
Yeah. And also just to say that I feel like it's a hard thing to do. I'm like, and I don't know why, right? Because speaking to Reese about it, he's so incredibly expansive and engaging and warm in the way that he was sharing kind of about a welcome to country, but it still feels difficult in my body to do it. I 100% feel like an imposter. I feel like I have no right to be saying any of these words, but I think that's why it'll just be it's a thing I'm really excited to evolve as we go. And the first few will probably be weird and sticky and like a bit.
Yeah.
We're going to find our way. And that's the fucking point.
Yeah, exactly. So we're doing the hard thing in public of trying to work out something and get better at it. But hey, that's a whole fucking point of this podcast. So you enjoy the journey with us.
I love being a dork with you in public. I love
me too.
I love getting it wrong in public and trying, because I think that I would so much rather be someone who has done a poor acknowledgement of country with the intention of getting better is better than no acknowledgement of country, and that matters. And
yeah,
I mean, but I think I'd give it a solid 6 out of 10.
Thanks.
Sorry. No, I didn't. Your part.
Turns out you are being judged for your acknowledgements of country by your partner.
Sorry.
Even
your part was
She's
amazing.
Keeping a scorecard.
Your part was amazing. I got fuck man. It's been a week and
we both had a bit of a fucking week.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest.
I'm
I'm sorry. I'm 100% in my head. That was you getting an 8 and me getting a 4, so it averaged out at 6. But that's a reflection of where my head's at.
I feel like 6,
it's a solid C.
It's a C. Yeah, we're gonna get it up there anyway. Fuck.
You guys.
I think this is also we were talking about this a bit before we started recording today, how I've been feeling a little bit like I've got sort of this like compassion fatigue, which also extends towards myself. So I think like where I would usually be available to give myself a little bit more leeway and compassion, I'm just like, oh, you stupid bitch. Why do you even try? Probably about to get my period too. That's usually when that voice comes around.
And every
stupid
time.
Fat bitch, why do you even bother? Look at you. But yeah, just like I don't know. Should I dive in? Should we talk about it?
If you want, we can. I mean, I feel like both of us, just to acknowledge, like sometimes people just have a shit week and it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's okay to just be. What was the phrase you used earlier? I loved it so much. We were like having a little debrief in the kitchen, just basically being like, what the fuck was this? Like, I don't even know what this week was. And you're like, what? I'm a big baby. I just want to cry and something. But
yeah, I don't like. It's like I don't want to do the like proper self-care. I just want to like self-soothe and be a baby and not do the work and just like be angry. You know, because like yes, all of this stuff, like having the tools to be able to be reflective and have deep conversations and understand where your emotions are coming from. This is so important and so useful. But sometimes you're like, you know what? I don't fucking feel like it today.
Yeah.
I don't feel like being the grown-up.
Yeah.
I don't feel like doing the work. I feel like stomping my feet and saying, why me? And being a big fucking stupid baby. And I think because you know that you will get there in the end, right? Like, but sometimes I feel like that is absolutely okay to just like give yourself a minute and be like, that's cool. Like maybe you don't do it super publicly or hurt someone else in the process. Yeah. But it's like, I think there's been like I won't go into detail about the individual events because at the end of the day, it actually doesn't matter. But there's just been like a compounding nature of like things that individually are a bit shit, but not that bad.
I think the technical phrase is a shitstorm.
A shitstorm.
Is what you're describing. Just a light shitstorm.
Yes, thank you to my emotional meteorologist. I think you're right. But noticing, like I'm a pretty optimistic person, right? And I think when I'm good and full and at my best, it's not that hard for me to quickly reframe a situation where something shit has happened to either problem solve for it or see the other person's point of view or be like, okay, like it's not that bad and pick myself up and move on. I think as a general rule, I'm pretty good at that. However, when you get a few of these things happen in a row, it's like the turnaround time to pick yourself back up again becomes like greater and greater to the point this week where I just felt hopeless would be the way that I would describe it, but it was like a sense of like losing a bit of hope in humanity. I love humanity.
No, you were the biggest fan of humanity.
People. But just and I'm coming out of it now, which is awesome, but noticing myself as a result of just being kind of exhausted, emotionally exhausted, not being able to extend the compassion I usually would where it is actually deserved. Yeah. So,
which also compounds it because in those moments, it's like you also know that you're handling something like I feel like I'm aware when I'm not being generous or showing up as I should. And then that adds like a further layer of guilt to already feeling cynical and hopeless and shitty. And then I'm like, and also you are behaving incredibly immaturely and potentially selfishly.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is another layer of frustration. But I think I don't know where to start with this story. So something I've been thinking about a lot, and we've talked about a couple of times in different contexts over the last week or so, is how, because a lot of this has been manifesting in anger for me, right? Like I've been angry, and that's really not a way that I like to feel or show up in the world. But I always feel like 90% of the time, if I'm angry about something, if I delve deep enough, the actual like originator, the original feeling or emotion behind that is usually like shame or embarrassment.
Yeah.
And so like a couple of the shit things that happened in my shit week were my beautiful new car, Betsy, which is a soft top Beetle convertible that I love. And this is like, you know, if you listened to a few episodes, I talked about it a bit, like this was a big deal for me. It's not an expensive car or anything. It's just the first car that I have chosen that I, you know, feel like this is like a treat that I deserve to have something that feels like me, that I love. And anyway, so Betsy was parked in the driveway at our house and someone overnight slashed the roof. I guess just trying to break in. Like I think it was just what do you call it when you're just like walking past and
opportunistic.
Yeah, thank you. I'll add that to the list of words that I forget. Hopefully it won't come up again.
Podcast is basically just Wordle for me.
But it's just me saying, what's the word?
What's the thing I'm thinking?
Yeah.
Disingenuous. No, wait.
I don't know if that's on the list, but that is definitely a word that I forget. So like that was a massive bummer. But that was the first of like the shitstorm. So I was sort of able to be like, well, you know, like if that's how you're spending your Wednesday night, you're probably not having like a super awesome time at life.
Yeah.
I can call the insurance and get this fixed. It's annoying. But when I felt myself like, and then that took me a minute to get to that stage, right? But at the start, obviously I was upset and I was angry because I was thinking, whoever you think is on the other side of this is not the person that you think it is.
It's like, you know, that the person slashing the top of the car has a narrative in their head about like, well, fuck, it's probably some like rich fucking asshole and they're fancy convertible and they don't give a shit and they can just afford to fix it. And you're like, dude, you have no fucking idea. Like I've worked my ass off. This is not nothing.
Exactly. Exactly. But then I think that like, when I talk about the sort of like embarrassment, like embarrassment isn't quite the right word, but I can't think of a better one. Maybe you can help me.
All right, okay.
Where it's like, well, like how fucking dumb am I to think that I could get something
you thought
nice?
You thought you could have nice things, but they're not for you.
Yeah,
and you
exactly.
should have known, like you're having ideas above your station. Who do you think you are?
Exactly. That is the like core feeling, which I know that is silly.
Yeah.
But that is how the feeling manifests for me, which is also frustrating.
Yeah.
And then one of the other shit things also involving a car, lots of shit car stories at the moment. And I don't want to go into too much detail about this either because it's actually pretty fucking horrific. But anyone who's been a woman on earth would have been harassed from a car at some point in time. If you're someone who likes to run like I do, that's probably happened to you a whole bunch of times, as it has to me, and it always makes me very fucking angry. But this is my last big run before the marathon that I'm running next week, my last big training run. And to be fair, it was already a fucking mess. Like it was raining that day. The creek was flooded. I had to try and recalibrate my route a bunch of times. Eventually I was just like, fuck it. I'm just going to like call it here, run back. And I was walking just sort of like the distance from, anyway, I was very close to my house, just walking the last little bit. And some fucking creep in his car was following me with the window down, driving at my walking pace. I had my headphones in. I tried just ignoring him for a while. And then eventually took my headphones out to anyway, it was a whole like, he was there ready for a fight essentially. And then I will just give you one line that he said because it's actually quite funny.
It's not, I'm so angry.
And this was like the second thing he said, right? He's like, oh, what are you doing? Are you walking? And I was like, yes, I'm walking. Would you mind like
fucking off?
Well, I wasn't even like aggressive. I'm like, could you keep driving, please? And then he goes like instantly into like anger, yelling, abuse mode where it's like he starts going, I was just being nice, you fuckhead. Which like was horrible and scary, but also like very funny. I'm like, what about this do you think is nice? When literally the only things you've said to me are you're walking, are you walking? And then I'm being nice, you fuckhead. Firstly, like, are you walking signals. Isn't like a compliment. It's just a weird thing to say.
Oh my God, thank you so much.
Oh my God, you noticed.
I'm walking.
I've actually been doing it for like 37 years. That's amazing.
I've been waiting for someone to notice.
Yeah, so anyway, but that sort of like escalated obviously very quickly because he was obviously not there to be nice. He was there to harass and intimidate a woman walking on her own. It was raining. It was early on a Saturday morning. There was no one else around. And he actually like pulled his car in front of me, which was very, very scary. And was saying, like, you've got to watch what you say, blah, blah, blah. Then I took a photo of his number plate and he said, are you taking a photo of my number plate? And I said, yeah, because I'm calling the fucking cops, dickhead.
Yes!
But it was actually, it was awful, right? And it was the most intense version of that situation that I've had because he actually made threats.
I think also just the image of someone stopping their car, you're suddenly like, oh, this has stopped being words and we've now entered the realm of action.
Yeah.
And it's already someone who's made it clear that they don't respect your boundaries and they don't respect social norms and understandings of propriety around it.
Yes.
So you're like, well, I don't fucking know anymore.
Well,
like,
what are the rules?
Exactly. Like we're not playing by the same rules and I have no idea where yours start and end now.
Yeah. I'm sorry about the power tools going on in the background, if you can hear that, by the way.
I love them.
Yeah, that's great. Just add a bit of texture.
I feel like it's the rage issue where we need to get like sound samples of like fucking band saws and just like grating.
It does feel like the right vibe.
I feel like that person has no idea the fire that they are playing with.
Yeah, well, anyway, look, I said I wasn't going to talk about it too much and then I talked about it a bunch, but the reason that I wanted to bring it up as comparison to the other situation was like, obviously I was quite rattled by that, and as soon as I got home and Dan wasn't home, I just burst into tears. But the interesting thing was it wasn't like I couldn't identify, like it was very much a like visceral like gut reaction thing. Like it happened to me before I had a chance to actually think like what, like am I sad? Am I angry? Am I scared? Like I don't actually know what the emotion behind this cry is. It just kind of happened to me. And then again, I think when I delved a bit deeper, the feeling was really like embarrassment. Like how stupid are you that you could think that this world is safe for you?
That fucking sucks.
And then that makes you feel angry and sad and just so sad. It's like you walk around thinking that you're fucking like some strong boss bitch, like running your business and doing your fucking little CrossFit and lifting your weights, and then some absolute fucking loser can destroy all of that in like 90 seconds. Boom, gone. And now I feel like a speck of dust and so vulnerable and so stupid for thinking that I could be okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Thank you. And this is obviously exaggerated, and this is just like what the feelings are in the moment. Like this is not the truth, this is not the situation, but they are the thoughts that were going through my head in the moment. And that feel like, and then it sucks to be like that you so immediately attack yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Why didn't I firstly, why did I put myself in that situation where you're like, you didn't put yourself in any fucking situation. You walk down a road. That's what roads are there for.
Yeah.
Firstly. And then secondly, it's kind of by default, the kind of person who goes out to intimidate anyone else is already a fucking nobody. Like that's the lowest of the low. Like it's a bully, and it's someone who's needing to feel some kind of power because they don't feel that they have any in the like it's already the kind of person getting off on intimidating a woman and making them feel small is already just the lowest, right?
Yeah.
And then that wave of rage to have feel like you've allowed that person in, like you
Yes,
allowed
exactly.
them to make you small. And you're like, well, if they're so fucking small, if that's such a nobody and they can make me feel smaller than them,
Yeah.
how small am I? Like, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah,
Look at me with my bigger, look at me and my independence and my fucking, like you say, girl, but like, you're like, oh, no, where is that now?
Yeah, exactly. And like, it's so frightening to see how easily that can be shaken. The other thing that made me mad was, and it was like amusing to me while maddening, like even in the moment, I was like, dude, why the fuck is your brain doing this? Like going like, oh, like, was I like, did I overreact? Like, I don't know, maybe like, I'm like, he pulled his car in front of your path and threatened you.
Yeah.
There's no world in which he was actually just being nice.
Yes. But isn't that so telling? Yeah.
But
you're
it's crazy.
Was I being a bit uppity? I mean, there I was getting overreacting to some nice man, just trying to say a nice thing to raise my self-confidence.
Just
like, no,
stalking me on the street
no.
when no one else was around, asking me if I was walking. The other thing he did was repeatedly ask if he was scaring me.
Oh,
and I was like,
gross,
if you have to ask someone if you're scaring them, you know that you are scaring them and you are trying
that's
to
what
scare
you
them.
want. Like that's what you're there. That's what you've showed up. That was the express intention of that entire interaction.
Yeah. So there is no ambiguity here
so much
on like whether or not this was a fucked thing to happen. But to watch my brain do that and jump to that point of going, oh, did I overreact a little bit? It's like, dude.
Yeah.
What?
Do you remember when we had Izzy Watts on the podcast? She was one of our first guests, and she has a podcast. I'm with her and a Facebook group, and it's around like women and sexual assault. And it's just really like, she's a beautiful human who's so generous and shows up in the world amazingly, and have so much respect for Izzy. But she spoke about how she was just trying to sell some stuff on Facebook Marketplace. Like it was like a jersey or a dress or some shit, and she just posted a picture of her wearing the article of clothing.
I do remember this, yeah.
Which feels very reasonable. Like you're like, this is the thing I'm selling. Let me show you the thing that you would exchange money for, right? That's not like,
you slut, Izzy.
I just want your attention. Oh my God. Like literally, and she's just like 95% of the messages she got in response were just unsolicited, like sexual advances, but not like, hey, can I buy you a drink? Do you want to, like, not, I mean, that would still be inappropriate, but like, no, they were like aggressive, calibrated to make you uncomfortable, to make you feel small. And fuck that.
I'm so interested to know, just quickly, I think one of them was just like a photo of a dude holding a pile of cash.
Oh my
God, anyway, which
has cash. It's so funny.
It's beyond me. But it's such an interesting thing, and I don't know a world in which we'd actually be able to have the opportunity to have these conversations much, because if you're like, I have met one or two people who are like, maybe like not this level of dickheadness, but like maybe just like grew up in a really, like sheltered environment where it was very like, misogynistic and racist and sexist or whatever, and then got out of that, moved cities, met someone who brought them out into a different world, and they're like, holy shit. But they were always like that. Do you know what I mean? They just hadn't had a door opened, whereas I'm not sure this is the same thing. All this to say, I'm so fascinated to know what actually goes on in people's minds, and I don't know that we would ever be able to have a conversation that would be able to make us understand it, because it's so clear to me that the intention is to intimidate.
Yeah.
The intention is not like, oh, I think this is going to end in a date. Like it's because even fuckheads, to borrow a term, like that, I think they know that. But what I would really want to know is like how conscious that is, because I feel like it's probably not likely, except for a few like proper psychopaths. I don't think it's very likely that they go out thinking, my intention is to go and scare and intimidate women today. They just like follow the feeling of doing a thing. But what do they think they are doing?
I 100% know what you mean. And I've thought about this often with dudes who start bar fights because there's a very particular kind of man that is like, he's exactly the guy, he's hanging out by the entrance and he is looking for someone to bump into him. Like, and I don't think someone like that has the self-awareness to know that they are out to pick a fight.
I disagree on that one, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I think there are 100% plenty of people who they're like, what I'm doing tonight is going out to fight.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I would have thought of that in the same kind of category as like, I don't think that person, as much as I think he 100% intended on having, I think he was looking for someone to intimidate, a woman to intimidate, but not consciously, like below the level of consciousness, because I think part of his narrative needs to be, he needs you to be the kind of uppity, like he's going to create that situation without admitting that that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And I see them as the sort of same kind of like.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe it is for some people, but I certainly like, as a kid, like that was a thing, like dudes would go out to pick fights. Yeah. And hey, fuck, I haven't thought about this as an analogy either. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe people who do this are conscious of it and they're like, yeah, I'm going to go out and intimidate some uppity bitches
He's
today.
like, it's a fucking Saturday morning, like my
up early.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've done the fucking gardening, I vacuumed the house, I made my wife breakfast in bed, the kids are dropped off at soccer. He's like, I've got an hour to kill.
Intimidate some bitches.
I'll just cruise the Coburg area finding someone training for a marathon in the rain.
Yeah, I
think
know.
the real takeaway from this is that you are the fucking most badass bitch in the whole world because you are literally running 17 kilometers in the freezing cold Melbourne winter with wet shoes, training for a marathon. That's wild to me. That's wild.
Thanks,
and I will never stop saying I think it's amazing because it is. I'm proud of myself if I like walk to the grocery shop. Like, am I an athlete? Am I a local hero?
You know what's so funny about
neutral.
that? Firstly, thank you. That's a lovely thing to say. But it's like how much you can like be focused and great at doing like that one thing, but then also like ask me to walk to the shops. I'm like, oh, what do you think I am? What kind of time do you think I have?
You're like, is the shop a 46-kilometer run away? Because then yes.
Will someone give me a medal for doing it at the end?
I have 6 hours to run there.
I think it's like, with doing graphic recording work, which is, the live drawing at conferences and stuff. So you're listening. People be like, oh, wow, like you must be such a great listener. And like, well, sometimes I'm a fucking terrible listener. Like that thing where you can turn it, like when you're doing it for a purpose, like, yes, you absolutely can be great at it and hyper-focused. And then other times when you're just like trying to have a conversation with your dad or your partner and you realize that you have not been listening for the last 7 minutes and you're like, yes.
I'm like, if you, with the correct, I suppose like anything, with the correct incentivization.
Just drop my pen for those listening.
You were listening so deeply.
I'm back.
But yeah, with the correct incentivization, I'm like, yeah, when you pay me, I'm a great listener. We'll listen for money.
Oh man. Yeah, that's I guess that's true. That's bleak when you put it in those terms, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry it was a fucking shitty week and that sucks and there's nothing. I wish I could say a thing to make it better, but that's not. I'm just here to listen and it fucking sucks.
Thank you, love. And as I said, like I should have put a disclaimer at the start of this. Like these are not like world-changing, like horrible, awful things. Like I have perspective. I understand there are worse things going on in the world.
Sucks.
But everything's relative, right? Like your shit time is still your shit time. And I think the thing that I wanted to talk about mainly was that like that compounding nature of things and how it's really hard to like dig yourself back up when it feels like what would normally be a little knock is like 5 little knocks, and then all of a sudden you're like much lower. The like light at the top is much further away, and now you need a ladder or something, whereas before you kind of just could have scrambled back up. Now you need tools and maybe help from someone else.
Totally. I think it's like there's got to be a relationship between, like you say, each of these are like alone is a speed bump and you keep going.
Yes.
But there's something about when too many happen in close enough proximity to each other, and everyone's got a different amount for that, but you reach some kind of tipping point, and even though your rational brain knows that it's just shit, like it happens every so often, we have a shitty encounter with a person, fucking something happens. Like these things all happen periodically, but every now and then they align in the shitstorm. And for me anyway, I think what I notice is, even though consciously I understand it's a numbers game and these things are down to chance and shitty luck, but when they happen at once, it feels personal. And it's like on this animal level where I watch myself and it's like something shifts in my head and it turns me into this defensive, almost like slightly more like victim version of myself, where now these things are happening to me. And like, I'm like, I know that they are. Of course, like I know that. I know that intellectually, but emotionally it feels, I'm like, but why? Like I try really fucking hard. Like I try, I'm not perfect, but I'm not a total cunt. I'm like, why?
That is such a perfect way to put it. And you touched on a thing there too, where I know that I'm deep in the hole and taking things personally when, like, as I said before, like when something that usually would be a pretty reasonable request and I would pretty easily be able to extend compassion for like someone having to cancel or change plans or whatever, something like that. Like watching myself go like react, like go to anger straight away, and not just anger, but like, you think I don't have shit going on? You think I'm not fucking busy? You think I'm not fucking burnt out? And then I'm like, whoa, who is this fucking ugly, angry person? And then feel embarrassed. And then it starts the cycle all over again. But it is, yes, that's exactly what it is. It feels personal. And then it's so hard to divorce that again. I mean, like the good side is it's like I can see it happening in almost real time. I'm like, I know that this is disproportionate. One of my words that I forget. I got it. What a good day.
We've turned this around.
This is the start.
I sense a change.
This is the start. I'm remembering words I always forget. Now I've forgotten the rest of my sentence.
Something was disproportionate. Oh, like when the response is disproportionate to the stimulus.
Yes, exactly. So like I think the good thing is to know that I have been, the couple of times that it's happened this week, is that realization is occurring in almost real time.
Okay, yeah.
Unfortunately, it doesn't stop the feeling happening, but I know that it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but I think I think part of it is like all of us have the version of ourselves under stress. Like when we're in optimal conditions, we're feeling safe, we're feeling loved, we feel like we belong, and we're delivering our best self. And then under pressure and enough erosion and without enough resources, we all have our default self, which is like the Gollum self that comes out. And it's like the shitty survival. And like for some people, that's going to be defaulting to anger or like a sense of righteousness or a sense of victim or a sense of like we all have like that switch that goes there.
Yeah.
But I reckon it's like the trick is knowing ourselves enough to notice, like, okay, we're like, I'm in that gear now.
Yeah.
And okay, like, because the thing is also, it feels really unfair. I know with me, that shitty self then doesn't get directed back at the original things that have put me there. It gets displaced onto the closest, nearest, and dearest things to me. So I'm like,
including you.
You
know what I mean?
That's the first one, right? Yeah. Actually, that's the first place. So like the XYZ have caused stresses, whether those things were deliberate or accidental, beyond my control or not. I get worn down. I go to the bad place. I bring out the worst self. but then that then gets distributed to completely other random places that had nothing to do with the original problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. It's real cool. Being a human in the world.
I mean,
yeah. Like I was saying, like sometimes I wish that like I could just sit in the righteous anger and not think about it and not do this.
It's
not
so
do the
much easier.
proper adult work and just sit there and be like, yeah, I am the victim and everyone did do this to me. And they should all be sorry. And I'm right. And you're all wrong. Pack of cunts.
I actually had a really interesting I know. I'm like, I just want to be, fuck you. I don't want to be mature. I don't want to be an adult and feel complex feelings that involve being vulnerable and nuanced and doing the work.
It's so boring.
But we had a thing at my studio the other day where we're on the 3rd floor and it's wooden. It's like an old Fitzroy building with wooden floorboards.
Yeah.
And we usually have about 3, it's a big open plan space, and we have about 3 dogs that come in most days, which is truly the dream.
My face just lit up. I'm like, oh, dog.
I know. They're really cute. And they kind of have this, they're not besties, but they've established like a sense of which sections of the space belong to who.
Okay.
It's just very cute. They manage themselves. It's the dream. But anyway, the other day, one of them, Taco, who's usually very chill.
Wait, hang on. Please tell me what type of dog Taco is.
Is a big, fluffy, white oodle of some kind. Groodle, potentially.
Okay.
Spoodle, maybe. Could even just be a poodle. Don't know. Oodly, like Taco looks like an actual cloud.
Aww.
It's amazing.
I'm slightly disappointed that it's not a chihuahua. But okay.
All right. You're like,
Taco.
We'll accept. So Taco got zoomies and was just running around the studio, and it was wholesome and beautiful and magical. Then within 5 minutes of Taco's zoomies, we get a message from the studio manager to say there's been a complaint from the tenant downstairs about noise. And in that moment, it's just like, I think because the noise was also as a result of something so innocent and joyful, it felt so mean-spirited, right? Like if it had been like, oh, we were moving tables around, we could have been like, oh, fuck, sorry, that was a bit annoying, we'll chill out. But it was just like the sweet animal was just feeling joy. Like something beautiful was happening in the world, and like, fuck you guys for complaining. Seriously, it was 5 minutes. Like, deal with it. We deal with your shitty music that filters through all the time. But then this kind of like, then there's the group chat, the studio group chat, and we all start like weighing in. And it kind of first starts as a joke. Everyone's like, oh, fuck, come on. Like, how can you be mad at Taco? And then it kind of just starts like escalating. And just like the degree of rage. And this is like, my studio mates are amazing. These are all beautiful, kind, lovely people.
Yeah.
And I was part of this too, but like it felt, the righteous rage felt so good. Like we were just fucking piling. I'm like, fuck this fucking, like just getting so indignant and outraged by this like total asshole downstairs. And like, yeah, to a point, okay, cool, you can vent. But it really really escalated to kind of a intense place.
Yeah.
And then someone was cool and like kind of called us all out on it, and we laughed about it, and it sort of de-escalated.
Yeah.
And then the studio manager just went and talked to the person downstairs, who was totally lovely and reasonable, and was just like, hey, it's really fucking loud and I've had a long week. And also the urinals from upstairs had like leaked into their kitchen.
Oh.
No one's, I mean, like it's so
that's their compounding thing. So
exactly.
It didn't start with the zoomies.
Can you imagine someone's piss dripping into your kitchen? Like that sucks, man.
Yeah.
So that was that. But it just kind of was in that moment where you're like, yeah, it is so much easier being mad at someone because their opinion is not the one that is not convenient to you to feel their feelings. Like empathy involves imagination, because you have to do the actual work of imagining someone else's world, someone else's value, someone else's feelings. Like it's fucking effort. Yeah. And it's just so much easier to be outraged.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And you don't know that the whole story that's come before that to make them have that
piss.
reaction. It's been literally piss rain in their kitchen. But even if it wasn't that, like maybe they'd had an argument with their partner earlier that day, or like there's so many different worlds in which that happens. Is there, if the story ends like that, right, where you get to have your little like, what's the word? We're playing the game again. Like sort of like marinate in the anger sort of, and it kind of feels good. Like it feels sort of naughty and good. But it did end up with someone calling it out, having a reasonable adult conversation, working out what the situation was. Is there value in doing the gross bit, or should we just not ever do it? Because the problem, I think, when it's with a group of people is that it can so easily, like you said, like escalate very quickly and then become a like it builds a vibe that now like we hate the neighbor or whatever, even though it hasn't, because this, I don't know, these are thoughts that are being formed as they come out my mouth, but my feeling is no, there isn't any actual value in it. But why does it feel so good then?
It really does though. And sometimes, I don't know. I was thinking this earlier when we were speaking about, I'm like, how do you change gears, right? So when you've had the kind of week that you've had with like a pile on of stuff, which isn't your fault, but is now nonetheless stuff you have to deal with. And it feels to me insane to have to just be like, so enlightened and zen and like like, you know, but it's okay, like just moving. I mean, maybe there are people who can do that, but for me that would feel really, I don't know, like dishonest in its own way. Like they kind of feels like they should be allowed to be space to feel the icky stuff, but it's, I don't know. But I guess it's also like recognizing that you're like, this is not me playing in my fucking higher self. This is me being a bit like,
there's something in between, I think. Like if you're, like I feel like I could do that with you because we know each other very well and there's no like, we know that we can bring each other out of it. Like we're like, let's just like play in this puddle of self-righteous anger for a little mini, for a hot sec, and then one of us will bring us out and it's okay. But if you don't know the people you're doing that with well, maybe that puddle is their home.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, no, don't leave. The water's so nice in here. And you'll be like, oh, maybe I'll stay a little bit longer.
I suppose it's also
so nice.
It's that like the danger of it's the classic, it's like the sugar thing of like the short term, the thing that feels good short term but is long term really bad for you.
Yes. Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's kind of a little bit, it's adjacent to that feeling of like bitching about someone with a friend.
Yeah.
And in the moment it feels so good because you feel like you're connecting with someone. Yeah. It happens to be about this third thing and you know it's icky, but like, my God, it feels like we're getting closer because we're sharing these like slightly dirty thought, like these bad thoughts or these thoughts that aren't allowed, but we've suddenly created this illusion of like a safe space where we can share about that and vent about it. But it's like that's not what that is, because all you're doing is creating a space that's fucking unsafe because now you're being an asshole. Like it's not.
Yeah, and it doesn't make anyone feel good long term.
You leave afterwards and you're like, that feels bad.
Yeah. This is like a slightly different situation, but the same kind of thing is like we all would have come across people in our lives, many people who just feel very negative. These are probably co-workers that you've had at some point in your life. And they're really hard to be around because they don't feel good to be around. But I think for a lot of people, that is the easiest way to connect is around a common enemy. And that common enemy could be your boss. It could be the weather. It could be the shoes that Sandra is wearing, like whatever the thing is that makes it. I don't know anyone called Sandra, just to be clear. Wow. But I think for many people, that's them trying to connect. And if you can, like, try and turn it around in that moment, like bring it out of the negative into connecting around something positive, I reckon that there is like a 95% success rate with that, at least in the moment. It's not like you're solving that for that person forever. But I think a lot of the time it's not because that there's a genuine complaint.
Yeah.
It's because they're trying to connect, and that's the best thing that they've got to.
It's the lowest hanging fruit.
It's
kind of there and it's available, and it feels like a easy one to just. I mean, the weather is perfect for that because there is no victim. It's a victimless crime.
Yes.
We can all complain about Melbourne weather and that will hurt no one's feelings.
Well, it won't hurt anyone's feelings, but it also doesn't feel good to complain.
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
Melbourne weather is my one exception for that because it's just such bullshit that it must be said.
But yes, I'm saying that as someone who complains about the weather constantly.
But yeah, I agree with you. And it is like, I was thinking about this the other day. I was speaking to a friend about cynicism, and I was reminded of it earlier when you were saying you're a very optimistic person, which you are, and it's something that I love and admire about you. So yeah, for me, when I hear you feeling that way, it's like a massive red flag that like you're not regular, like you're not feeling like just me, because it's fucking out of character. Like it falls very much outside of the realm of the way that you normally operate and the way that you normally think. And we were speaking, it was on Monday, I think, with a friend. I went for dinner and we were speaking about when we were younger being attracted to cynical seeing cynicism as a sign of intelligence.
Yes.
And seeing optimism as a sign of less intelligence. And I think that that's potentially, when you're young, that's your own insecurity, right? Like that's you projecting your insecurity, and there's something about someone who's so fucking worldly. Like they must know so much about the world to like tear everything down. And now it is probably the trait that I find the most repulsive in people. Like I cannot, and it's 100% because I know that, like, as someone who's a recovering cynic, like I know that bullshit game, and I'm like, no, fuck you, don't come near me with that. Not interested. It's such a fucking smoke and mirrors game.
Totally. It's so interesting you think that, and that you say that, sorry. And I think the more that time goes on, the more I look at those, like, aside from, of course, like a healthy skepticism of things that deserve it, but being pessimistic or cynical, I actually think is a pretty adolescent way of existing in the world. And like I definitely, because I've always like brand new baby soul, I've always been an optimistic person, but I certainly remember trying to hide that with everything I had as a kid. Like, don't let people know that you actually think the world is kind of pretty cool. And that people are generally pretty nice. Yeah. Like, that's so deeply uncool to like be happy.
Like you say, it's adolescent. It's a very teenage way of thinking. And I suppose because when you're a teenager, you're sitting at that intersection of you are a child who doesn't want to be a child anymore. So you're a child feigning adulthood. And I guess part of that is wanting to appear more worldly and have more experience than you have. So I feel like we can excuse it in teenagers because that is a relevant and appropriate part of that journey. But when it's coming out of the mouth of someone who's in their 30s, to me it's like cowardly, and it's also intellectually lazy. Because
I think so
there's
too.
There's good shit in the world, there's bad shit in the world, there's neutral stuff in the world. At some point, as the director of your attention, you need to take responsibility for how you're going to spend that attention and what sense you're going to make out of things, and just being fucking cynical about everything. Like it would be the same as being optimistic about everything.
Yes.
Any blanket response to the world is lazy.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Not that I don't sometimes do that. Two things. So firstly, on the adolescent thing, I think the other part of that is that you've got all these fucking like crazy hormones raging through your body, and you're angry most of the time. Like, it also makes sense to have more of a pessimistic view on things because you're angry and you don't know why, or horny and you don't know why,
or horny and angry, which is a killer combo. Please can the title of this episode be Horny and Angry?
I mean, you know I love a clickbait title, so 100%. But on the like being lazy thing to like just be blanket optimistic or pessimistic or whatever, I was listening to Will Anderson's podcast, Philosophy, which has just returned after having a bit of a hiatus. And he's now off social media, which I think he's been off for like a year or two, maybe, something like that. So his accounts are still managed by his agent or management or whatever, but he's not on it. And is now like, he's like, I'm so conscious of being like that person who talks about it all the time, but like it's so good. Like it's so good to not be on it. But talking about how the challenge of now having to actually consider what he thinks about things.
Oh, wow.
With no external influence. Yeah, or just like not being so, like it's not like you would be aware of it previously, that you would just see like the chatter from people you respect, from your friendship group, the stuff that comes up in your feed because of the algorithm, you know, things that come from media sources you respect, blah, 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 whatever. I think maybe not realizing like how much all of that together makes a lot of decisions for you, and perhaps, and like I'm 100% guilty of this most of the time, and that if you've got enough like people or sources that you trust sharing a certain opinion on things, that maybe you don't delve any deeper to look into what your actual opinion on something is, because you're like, well, this is like good enough, which in a lot of cases it probably is. But I just thought that was such an interesting like offshoot of being like, and he wasn't saying like, oh, it's so wonderful. He's like, well, now I just have to like, it was more like it's kind of confronting and time consuming and like heaps harder.
I mean, at the end of the day, thinking for yourself is more work than just receiving.
Totally.
I mean, this is literally, this is the principle that like the entire mass media industrial complex works on, right? Is that like we have evolved to avoid effort wherever possible. Effort costs us, right? Yeah. And it's like if someone presents us on a plate all our opinions, we're like, oh, cool.
Yeah, they feel right. Yeah, they seem right. Cool. They seem to be in line with the other things that you've believed in the past. They're from people that you love or trust. And we like, as humans, like our brains work as pattern recognition machines. Like half of the shit that we see isn't even real. We're making most of it up. We're filling gaps most of the time. Do you know what I mean?
I know. I just love that this is the episode where we fully unravel. Like we're basically like, nothing's real. Which is true though.
You're so right. This is the one where I finally lose it. Nothing's real.
Also, it's our 51st episode. Next episode is 1 year. It's our anniversary.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So we're allowed a little existential crisis episode.
Right on time.
Yeah, exactly. Just the return of Saturn.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't even remember where I was fucking going with that now. No, it doesn't. I cannot tell you how much it doesn't matter. Other than to say that it is very like there is a good reason why it's so seductive and easy to follow things that are presented to us in a way, and you cannot like research to an nth degree every single thing, every single topic that comes across your path in life, because you would not have a job. Like you would not be able to do anything else if you looked into the actual like depths of background of every single issue that came up. So there is a point in which you have to, you know, defer to like trusting experts on a thing or whatever, you know, like.
It's a version of, have you heard of it's a concept called the School of Athens?
No, I don't think so.
It's as usual, I'm gonna basically butcher half of this. This is a concept that I'm gonna half remember, but this is the way that it's in my head and that I use it. There's a painting in the Vatican that I think, God, this is guys, I have an art degree, but I'm about to fuck this up.
Just focus on the sultry sounds of the power tool in the background.
Which is essentially like, it's this idea of a School of Athens, which is this painting of this steps of this temple and all of the great philosophers, and they're all there and they're kind of having this conversation, and this idea of, it's essentially like a picture of Western philosophy, like the most influential minds of Western philosophy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the guy that did the ceiling. Mm-hmm. Who's that? Michelangelo? Da Vinci? One of the Ninja Turtles that painted the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. I'm blanking. I was like, now.
yeah. Then I'm like, oh no.
It's like I'm weirdly blanking now because I'm like, shit, imposter much. Anyway, so the idea is like taking that painting and being like, all of us have inside our head our own School of Athens, which is like the collection of people that we respect and trust, and whether or not we're conscious of who those people are, we all have this, like we carry them with us. Mm-hmm. So to be intentional around like sitting down and being like, who are the 5 to 7, maybe 10 people that I trust, whose opinions matter to me, who I give a shit about. And these can be people that you know, they can be your friends and family, they might be public figures. But to your point of, at some point you do need to trust other people. Like you can't learn everything and know everything. At some point you decide, I trust this news source and I'm not going to go to every area of conflict and do the research on the ground myself. I'm going to read this newspaper and I choose to trust. I'll still be critical, but I'll accept that, or I'll weight that more heavily. Yeah. Same with your friends, where if you're like, oh, I did this thing, I behaved in a certain way and I'm not sure if it was good or bad. Maybe 90% of the world are like, fuck you, that's the wrong way to live. But you're like, am I going to listen to all the trolls on Twitter? Or am I going to speak to these 3 people? And if they call me up on it, I'm going to rethink my behavior. I'm going to go apologize. I'm going to change. Or if those 3 people are like, stand behind you, back the reasons that you made a certain choice, then you're going to accept that and choose. But it's like to have that sense of like, who the quorum of people or voices that matter to you are, to kind of steer you through that noise. Yeah. Because the thing is, you have it regardless. It's just whether you consciously know and accept and admit kind of where those voices are, or if it's still, you know, the voice of your first grade teacher judging you for looking weird or behaving in a certain way.
Yeah. And I think it's also good to, like, as you say, they exist regardless, but would be also good to sort of take stock of who are the voices that you value and matter to you, and are they the ones you spend the most time with?
Yeah.
Because they may or may not be. Unsurprisingly, there's a very similar metaphor in Brené Brown's work.
Yes. Imposter syndrome, bingo.
I think it's in her Dare to Lead stuff that's around that. Basically, like if you're thinking of like walking into any situation, like walking into an arena, and then I would totally butcher this if I tried to go for the whole metaphor, but essentially, like, you know, you've got, yes, like those people who are the balcony of people who trust, like you're looking to them for their reactions when you're coming in. Then you've got like cheerleaders, or you've got this bit, like there's a whole like metaphor that works around it, which I found super useful. And again, like looking at who those people are, those voices that are really important, and if they're actual, you know, human beings in your life, if you're not spending time with them, why not? And probably more importantly, if you're spending lots of time with people whose opinions you don't value so much, which is different from opinions being different, right? You can have different opinions on things and value that person's opinion because you respect them as a smart, considered, curious person. But
it's kind of like in school where you don't just get a mark I love your smile. You're like, what bullshit metaphor is she
No,
about
I'm
to
so
say?
excited. I'm
It's so cute.
excited.
Your face, you're like, right, hit me with it. What's it going to be?
I love it. I'm excited. I'm so up
So
for
it's
it.
like when you finish a math sum, you don't just get the mark for the right answer at the end. You get it for the working out. And it's exactly that.
Yeah.
You can have a differing opinion to someone you respect, but it's like, what's interesting is how they got there and how they worked it out and like how you work it out. And that feels like where the value of that is.
Exactly. And that's when you get to actually understand what you think.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we should go.
Are you 51 episodes, what a flawless ending. That was the equivalent of like the gymnast just bouncing off the thing, just fucking landing. Just walking off.
What I think it is like when you were a kid and you'd write stories and like inevitably some of them would end with, and then I woke up and it was all a dream. It was like, I can't think of how to wrap this up. And then we woke up and it was all a dream.
I will just say though that I knew when I arrived today and both of us were little thunderclouds in your kitchen that somehow the process of recording this would turn that around. And I don't mean that in this kind of like, we have to be happy all the time, everything, silver linings. Like, fuck that. We get to be mad as well. We can be both. We can be all of it. But I really do trust this process. And I just loved, I was like, we can get into it. We can have the cry. We can have the tantrum. And yeah, like you're saying, I think when someone knows you well enough that you're allowed space to have your tantrum because they see the good, they will hold you to your better self. You're like, we come out the other side of it. We're not going to live in the like,
we don't live in the puddle.
Yeah. And I love you. And I'm sorry that it was a fucking shitstorm of a week. And I hope the weekend's better. Oh,
I love you too. And also just to say, you've also had a pretty shit week. And we just talked about me the whole time.
I was so happy. I'm like, let's talk about, can I sit here and just weigh in on someone else's life? Because mine fucking... I don't want to do the work. I just want to stay mad for a bit.
We can go and be mad for a bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love you and I feel so lucky to get to have these conversations. And there's, this is probably a chat for another episode, but it's something I have been actually reflecting on quite a lot recently, is what a weird privilege it is to listen to yourself in conversation every week, which is something that at the start of doing this podcast, like most fucking normal people, you're like, ew, blah, gross. Like I will do this because I have to do it, but it's not comfortable. But now I actually think, well, of course, there are always bits where you're like, oh my God, like why couldn't you just get that word out? Why do you say like so often? Why do you forget so many fucking words? That bit of self-consciousness will always be there. That's fine. But it's like it's my way of not journaling. It's my get out of journal free card. But to be able to hear yourself work things out, to hear your own workings out, I think is actually like an incredible opportunity. And you guys get to hear my diary essentially. But it's awesome. I think it's incredibly valuable and a weird thing to do, but I now really love it and value it, and I think it's become a really important part of my life. So to any other anti-journalers out there who don't feel like they've been able to get there, maybe just like record yourself having a chat.
Start a podcast. We'll listen. Find your best mate and work it out in a safe place. Think out loud.
Thing this world needs.
More podcasts. Are we heroes? I don't know.
I think so.
Fucking talk bullshit.
All right. Well, I love you, Miss Alice Edie. Thank you for today.
Jess. And thanks.
Speak to you soon.
Thank you for listening. And wherever you are, I hope your week is slightly better than the one that preceded it.
Yeah. You can splash in the puddle, but don't stay there.
Yeah.
There's a whole world out there.
Yeah.
All right. Love you.
Bye. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Imposter Syndrome Club. Please follow us wherever you find your podcasts. And if you're feeling extra kind, rate and review. Or if you got any insights or value from this, share with a friend.
You can also find us on Instagram at imposterpod or online at impostersyndromeclub.com.